Break down the story of a man whose name literally strikes fear across continents, yet almost nobody knows what he actually looks like. We're talking about the mastermind behind the CJNG. Okay, let's dive into this. $15 million. That staggering number, that is the current U.S. government bounty on the head of just one single man, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, better known globally as El Mencho. To put that into perspective for a second, that is triple the initial reward they offered for the infamous El Chapo. But even with that massive price tag hanging over his head, El Mencho remains completely untouchable. Which naturally forces us to ask, how exactly does a guy who dropped out of school in the 5th grade manage to build and control a transnational criminal empire worth an estimated $50 billion? Seriously, $50 billion. This isn't just your standard crime story. It's a fascinating, albeit super dark, case study in ruthless strategy, calculated patience, and sheer organizational mastery. Let's trace exactly how he did it. Section 1. From poverty to prison. Let's look at his humble beginnings. Because to truly grasp the sheer terror El Mencho unleashes today, we have to start at his roots, which were incredibly humble. He was born in 1966 in a small town in Michoacan, Mexico, growing up in severe poverty alongside 5 brothers. His family barely survived by farming avocados, and you have to remember that trade was heavily extorted by local cartels, even back then. So the grinding poverty and constant cartel abuse pushed him to completely abandon his education by the 5th grade. Seeking a way out of that brutal cycle, he made the choice to illegally cross the border into the United States. And as we can see, once he was in the US, his criminal career escalated fast. It's just a relentless drive. In '86, he's arrested in San Francisco with a loaded gun. By '89, he's caught selling drugs and gets deported. But he comes right back over, leading to a massive heroin bust in San Francisco in 1992. That one finally landed him in a Texas federal prison until he was paroled in 1997. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what happened during that 1992 bust. El Mencho was actually doing the deal alongside his older brother. Right in the middle of the exchange, El Mencho glanced at the cash the buyers handed over and noticed the bills were perfectly stacked. Just completely perfect. His instincts fired instantly. He knew right then and there they were undercover cops. It was too late to run, but when they threatened his brother with a life sentence, El Mencho took the fall and pleaded guilty just to save him. It shows us, even back then, this incredibly sharp mind for counterintelligence, plus a fierce, fierce loyalty. Section 2. The Inside Man. The return to Mexico. So, after doing his time in Texas, he gets deported back to Mexico in 1997, and upon returning, he makes what is arguably the most brilliant strategic move of his entire life. He joins the state police force in Jalisco. Now, let's be totally clear here. This was absolutely not a moment of reform or turning his life around. By putting on that police uniform, El Mencho was basically taking on a calculated internship. He wanted to learn the inner workings of law enforcement from the inside out. He absorbed all their training, memorized their security protocols, and completely mastered their counterintelligence tactics. He learned exactly how the police hunt, so he would know exactly how to stay off their radar later. Let's move to and see how this builds, because that foundation paid off almost immediately. He quickly ditched the police badge and took those brand new skills straight to the Milenio cartel, starting out as a highly lethal hitman. And he cemented his status not just with violence, but through a very strategic marriage to Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, whose family was already deeply connected to the cartel's top brass. Leveraging his police background, he became this elite bodyguard for key figures, just quietly studying the entire business from the inside. Section 3. Birth of the CJNG. The massive tipping point. His patient climb through the ranks perfectly coincided with a huge power vacuum in 2010. Up until then, El Mencho was essentially operating under the massive umbrella of the Sinaloa cartel. But in 2010, top Sinaloa boss Nacho Coronel was killed in a military raid. That sudden death completely fractured the Milenio cartel, plunging the state of Jalisco into this incredibly bloody, chaotic internal war for control over all those lucrative drug routes. In the middle of all that chaos, El Mencho took command of a splinter faction called Los Torcidos, which translates to the Twisted Ones. Applying literally everything he'd learned, he waged a ruthless war against the rival factions. He won, but the cost was horrific. The murder rate in Jalisco more than doubled in just a matter of months. And once he had total, undisputed control, he rebranded his victorious faction into what we know today, the Cartel de Jalisco Nuevo Generación, or CJNG. To lock down his new empire, he knew he had to send a message to the most terrifying rivals on the block at the time, Los Zetas. So, in September 2011, El Mancho orchestrated the dumping of 35 bodies in broad daylight in Veracruz. It was a totally chilling message. He was essentially copying the extreme, military-style brutality of Los Zetas, adopting their own horrific tactics to ultimately overpower them and systematically swallow up their territory. Section 4. An empire of violence. And man, did they expand! That grim victory transformed the cartel into a globally diversified shadow corporation. El Mancho has real business intellect. They didn't just stick to one drug. They diversified massively. They run over 100 isolated meth labs, hidden deep in the forests, but they also expanded heavily into fentanyl, heroin, and cocaine. And to fund this lightning-fast expansion, they treat crime like a corporate portfolio. They profit heavily from secondary illicit industries like large-scale oil theft, human trafficking, and the widespread extortion of totally legitimate, everyday business owners. The sheer scale of this operation is actually kind of hard to wrap your head around. Intelligence agencies estimate that this one single organization, El Mancho's CJNG, is responsible for smuggling a full one-third, roughly 33.3%, of all the illicit drugs entering the United States. One organization. And this brilliantly illustrates how they protect that massive market share. The CJNG boasts a 5,000-strong militia. We're talking about an actual army moving in armored convoys, wielding military-grade RPGs, machine guns, and 50-caliber snipers that easily outgun the local police. They're so heavily armed and frankly so emboldened that in 2015, when the military tried to capture El Mancho, his forces actually shot down a Mexican military helicopter with a rocket-propelled grenade. 6 soldiers died. This kind of warfare makes intelligence experts compare them way more to a terrorist organization like ISIS than a traditional drug cartel. Their absolute brazenness against the state is really unparalleled. In 2020, they attempted to assassinate Mexico City's police chief, Omar Garcia Harfuch. And this didn't happen in some remote village. This was on Paseo de la Reforma, literally one of the most secure, upscale avenues in the capital. They blocked his vehicle and unloaded over 400 bullets into his armored SUV. The chief miraculously survived, but 3 people were killed. It was a terrifying display of El Mancho's complete lack of fear when it comes to government authorities. Section 5. The untouchable phantom. How is he still free? So, the crucial point is, with the entire military hunting him and a $15 million bounty hanging over him, why hasn't the most wanted man on earth been caught? Well, look at the fatal flaws of past kingpins, Pablo Escobar and El Chapo. They were fame-hungry. They wanted public attention. They gave interviews. They lived these lavish, flashy lifestyles in the public eye, and that is what eventually got them captured. El Mancho is the exact opposite. He is hyper-disciplined. He consumes 0 drugs, 0 alcohol. He completely shuns the spotlight, preferring to hide like an actual ghost out in the remote, dense mountain ranges of Jalisco and Colima. And even though he lives this incredibly rugged life out in the mountains, his wealth is just astronomical. El Mancho's personal net worth is estimated at a staggering $1 billion, while the CJNG's total assets hover around $50 billion. This is a cartel that operates across 6 different continents and has a documented presence in literally all 50 U.S. states. The level of his isolation is just extreme. He rarely, if ever, meets face-to-face with his own cartel members. Authorities only have a handful of really outdated photographs to even try and track him. Over the years, government agencies have managed to arrest his brother, his wife Rosalinda, and his son. They even extradited his son to the U.S., hoping all of that would finally draw him out. But El Mancho? He remains firmly in the shadows, absolutely refusing to surrender or make even a single misstep. It brings to mind a very sobering reality about the underworld. The throne in the drug world is temporary, but the phantom kingpin currently holds it in a grip of unprecedented terror. He literally learned from the mistakes of every single cartel boss that came before him. He combined official police training with absolutely ruthless violence and unshakable discipline to build this seemingly impenetrable shield around himself. Which leaves us with a terrifying question. As El Mancho continues to operate as a ghost in the mountains, outsmarting multinational law enforcement agencies year after year, who or what could possibly dismantle a $50 billion empire built entirely on perfect discipline and absolute terror? It's a massive challenge for global security, and one that, right now, remains totally unsolved. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the forces shaping our world.